Let us join our hearts in prayer. Gracious God, we pause to thank you for our journey, for life, for health and strength. We give you thanks for imagination and foresight. We give you thanks for remembrance of the power of Jesus' resurrection and love. We give you thanks. In your infinite goodness, you have provided us with the privilege to tarry in this place so that your will in our lives may be strengthened. May our attitude reflect a heartfelt desire to become more like you. Oh God, may we hear your voice now and in the many moments ahead. In your mercy we pray. Amen.
I don't get to use this mallet many times during the ceremony, so I'm going to start us with that. And ask Mr. Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Moderator, we are close to having a quorum. We're waiting for, nope, we're all here. Quorum is present.
Great, thank you. The meeting is now convened. Welcome to this stated meeting of the Presbytery of the Cascades. My name is Mike Gillespie, and I'm moderator for this meeting. Before we begin with business, we'd like to welcome those of you who are here for the first time. If you are near a ruling elder that is here for the first time, we invite you to introduce that ruling elder, or if you are a ruling elder either here alone or incognito and here for the first time, we invite you to introduce yourself. Any first-time elders? Yes. Welcome. Yes. Welcome. Yes. Okay, I'll try to catch the names and repeat them. Yes. Doug Ewell, Westminster, Portland. I heard Ashley, that's all. Nancy Ashley, okay. Any other first-time elders? Yes. Bill Wheeler, Columbia, Vancouver, welcome. Yes.
I would like to take the opportunity to welcome David Schwabe from Southern Memorial Presbyterian Church, the son of Margaret Schwabe, who was 40 years in the presbytery. I don't see him in this hall, but I did see him out front. So I would like to introduce David Schwabe.
Okay. David Schwabe, wherever you are, welcome. Okay, is that all the elders? No. Carol Gardner? Garner, welcome from Kenilworth. Any others? Okay, the same now for minister members of Presbytery. If you're near a minister member that is here for the first time, or if you are a minister member that is kind of keeping your head down, you know, and you are here by yourself, or nobody knows you're a minister member yet, you're invited to introduce yourself. Any minister members here for the first time? Rob, welcome. Okay, yes, Murray. Tom Berry from Bethany. Welcome. Any other minister members? Okay, so we also welcome presbyters, either teaching elders or ruling elders in good standing, who are serving in other governing bodies of this church or another Christian church to this meeting. Presbytery custom is to allow seating of these visitors as corresponding members, granting them voice but no vote in the proceedings. Mr. Clerk, have you been notified of individuals to be seated as corresponding members at this meeting?
Moderator, I have. The Reverend Dr. Frances Taylor Gensch is here, and we'd love to make sure she has voice since she'll be preaching this evening.
Okay, so we're going to seat her as a corresponding member with with voice but no vote. Okay. Oh, without what presbytery? So she's from National Capital Presbytery. Members and commissioners, are you aware of others to be seated as corresponding members at the meeting? Anyone else? Is there any objection to any of this person being seated as a corresponding member? Seeing none, she is so ordered. Are there any other visitors here who we can now recognize and welcome? Anyone doesn't fit in one of the prior categories? Okay. And I also, you know, often we welcome like first-timers and we welcome corresponding members and we just assume that everybody else is, you know, status quo or something. But I want to welcome all of you, all the rest of you who have not yet been introduced and have not yet stood up, and to celebrate your participation at this presbytery, to celebrate that you coming back to another presbytery meeting, and to celebrate your being here to express the voice of the church through the Holy Spirit. Thank you for being here. So before we go on to adopting the docket, which is the next item of business, I want to remind us about cell phones. If you have a cell phone, I would encourage you to put it either on silent or vibrate or totally turn it off. Are you live streaming? Also, I want to say that I think that the Wi-Fi is, I'm not sure if it's available or not, but we encourage you not to use the Wi-Fi here in the church during the meeting because it is being used for streaming as well, I believe. Is that still correct? Okay. So it interferes with those trying to participate at a distance if you're using the Wi-Fi. All right. The next item of business is to adopt the docket. The docket can be found on pages 1 through 3 of the background papers. Mr. Clerk, are there changes to the docket?
Moderator, first, let me welcome you to this meeting, since you've welcomed everyone else.
Thank you very much.
Moderator, we have a few changes to the docket. The chair of the Presbytery Leadership Commission has other commitments this evening, so we'd like to get her to the front of the line. So we've made some changes. After the welcome and church celebration, we will have the consent agenda, followed by the Presbytery Leadership Commission report. Then we'll move back into regular docketing times. I will note, though, that during the Commission for Preparation for Ministry report. That report is found in your background papers. Hopefully there will be no items of business in that report, so we've moved our General Assembly Commissioner report, an exciting report, to that time. So I suggest we adopt the docket with those changes and authorizing the moderator to make other changes as our moderator sees fit.
So the assumed motion is to make these several changes to the docket as printed. If there's no objection to moving forward, then we're going to proceed with this as presented. Are there any objections to these changes in the docket? Hearing none, it is so ordered. So, I have something in here about the Presbytery Leadership Commission, but we're not there yet, right? We're there. We're not. No, we're.
I think we want to hear from.
I think we want to hear from the church first.
The church first.
So I'd like to invite the Reverend Del Burnett to bring greetings and orientation to the facilities, as well as to share about the ministries of First Presbyterian Church Salem.
I want to welcome you all to this wonderful church and this wonderful sanctuary. I decided to wear orange in honor of the national champion collegiate baseball team. And just so you know, in doing so, I have lifted the spirits of half of my congregation, and I will receive emails from the other half. But yeah. The normal sorts of things that we have around here, restrooms, if you're looking for those, find an elevator and on either floor, and there's a restroom right near that. They have anatomically correct figures on the wall by them, so you can figure that one out. There's an ADA restroom behind the sanctuary in the hallway that is our staff hallway, and so you can use that one if needed. If you have any questions about anything going on, we have maps of where groups are gathering and meetings are happening. And then there's people with rather understated green t-shirts running around that you could ask questions of, and they would have, most of them will have answers. But I do want to say a welcome to you. For those of you who are first time with us, it's great to have you here. When I first came to Salem First Presbyterian Church, my first Presbytery meeting is I was kind of standing around doing the chit-chat over coffee and snacks. Somebody came up to me and said, now, are you new to the Presbytery? I said, yes, I am. And they said, well, what church are you at? And I said, well, I'm the pastor at Salem First Presbyterian Church. And their response was, oh, Ted and Vela's church. And so if you have any questions, you can't get somebody in a green t-shirt to answer, find Ted and Vela. He has the answers for everything. So, and some of them are actually correct. Well, allow me to welcome you to Salem First Presbyterian Church, one of the oldest congregations in the Salem area. On May 15th, 2019, we will celebrate our 150th anniversary as a life and mission in this community, in this city. A community of faith that has a major impact on the city and state and nation through its lifetime. Just in case you didn't know, 4 governors of the state of Oregon were members in this congregation, as was President Herbert Hoover, raised and nurtured in this church. So there. Yeah, Portland. Yeah, take that, huh? Come on. 2009, Salem First Presbyterian Church began a major mission remake, Sacred Journey, from the traditional First Church attractional model, providing religious goods and services for attendees, to a more dynamic listening, learning model of missional engagement in our city, in our region, and in our country. The foundational theological notion driving this missional makeover was the truth that our calling is not so much to bring Christ to the world, but rather to recognize the places where Christ is already present in the world, and then to find ways for us to come alongside him as agents of compassion and justice and reconciliation. This notion of co-creating with Christ God's reign of right relationships in our city has in fact empowered us to risk becoming more interactive, dynamic, relational, courageous, and reflective as a community of faith. Willing to allow our missional context to form and shape the way we embody the gospel with one another and the way we live it out in our community. The two reference points for this journey beyond the traditional maps of church life have been our mission and vision statements. And I think they're going to be projected on the screen. I'm always hesitant because Ashley is at the monitor, and that's always a frightening thing. But anyway, our mission statement is a community of ordinary people experiencing and embodying God's extraordinary love. Our vision statement: we are a Christ-centered, listening, learning community, embracing the needs of our city through the grace of Jesus Christ, seeking ways to see, know, care for, and empower our neighbors as we welcome them home. As we've managed and navigated this challenging season of our life, those have been the two reference points that we've called upon many times to help us make decisions to discern where we thought God was calling us. While our journey continues to stretch and challenge us, it also empowers us to dream God's dream for our future. This dreaming about the future has taken the form of embracing and calling upon the New Matrix organization to help us with a visioning process through which we hope to discern the next chapter of our saga as the people of God at the corner of Winter and Chemeketa streets. Over the past 9 years, while we have experienced a number of things, here's some highlights that we wanted to share with you. We've reorganized the session mission design to a decentralized form of government to empower lay leadership and servanthood at the most direct levels of mission and engagement. We've adopted a Sunday AM dual worship style that for the first time in 140 years of this congregation's life, we practice on a weekly basis two styles of worship. Classic service at 9:30 here in the sanctuary. At 11 o'clock, we have a contemporary service downstairs in our worship center. We also have added a couple of other interesting worship experiences. On Reformation Sunday, each year, we have a big celebration here called the Kirkin of the Tartans, where we celebrate our Reformed tradition and everything Scots. And that's complete with haggis, which is not one of the best things the Scots have come up with, and then shortbread, which is one of the better things the Scots have come up with. We also, on the Sunday before Ash Wednesday, we have a special service we call the Mardi Gras service, where we celebrate the gospel through jazz, beads, and beignets. And if you haven't had a beignet, you're going to be surprised when you get to heaven, because that's what we're all going to be eating. We've also reoriented our congregational energy, focus, and our staff on the missional context just outside our doors. We've reorganized our Board of Deacons to become the pastoral and congregational care arm of our church. We've enhanced the media, technology, and user-friendliness of our facility to better serve our mission and the Salem community. We have opened our facility to Little Friends Montessori Preschool, which is just down that hallway. We've also opened it up to the downstairs to Brothers of Valor, which is a ministry through media and technology for at-risk students on our streets in the city of Salem. We are partnering with Brothers of Valor as they have created a recording studio, and soon we hope to have use our lower worship area for a venue for students to try their first concert or their first public display of their skills and abilities. We also are having a nesting of a new church called the New Beginnings Church, which is a Marshallese congregation that is in our facility. We continue to be connected to Salem Interfaith Hospitality Network, now called Family Promise, and we host families here on about 6 times a year basis. These are families who are homeless and looking for in a program that will help them find their way back to a sustainable life. We participate in the Community Action Center's warming shelter. In fact, it was a poignant Christmas Eve for us, because as we celebrated worship here, as Presbyterians always do on Christmas Eve, the very moment that Jesus was born 2,000 years ago, that below us were 85 homeless people sleeping in our basement. And it was one of those moments where it all made sense. Beyond that, we have also been involved in supporting of Young Life Leadership Development, Men's Bible Study Fellowship, and numerous other civic and charitable organizations and agencies in and through our facility. We've strengthened our commitment to Presbyterian disaster assistance over the past several years, sending work crews literally all over the place. In 2015, the session produced a statement of our common humanity in response to the fear-driven xenophobic language of that presidential campaign. And you can find that statement on our website and also in the hallway by the office as you're exiting out toward the parking lot. Immediately on the heels of that, our session made the decision to adopt and to support the Mahando family, which is a refugee family from Somalia, a Muslim family that had spent 10 years in a refugee resettlement location prior to arriving in the States. And in 2017, we became a full inclusion, third way congregation as we opened our doors, our ministry, and our life to all people, all types, all kinds. And when we say every Sunday that we have communion, this is open for all of God's people, we mean all of God's people. Now, an interesting byproduct of this journey has been some significant demographic changes in our church. In 2009, the average age of Salem First Presbyterian Church was 65. Primarily made up of white bread Presbyterians with long membership tenures. Sadly, over the 9 years I have been here, with nothing me doing about it whatsoever, 140 of these saints have graduated to the church triumphant. Today, our classic worship service average age is now 68. But the average of our contemporary coffee house bistro worship service, as we call it, is actually 39, which brings our actual general average of membership now to 59 rather than 65. We are smaller. We struggle with financial issues. We continue to deal with all the other things that other congregations have dealt with. But in the process of all of that, we seem to have found a way to open our doors and our lives and our church to another generation, a younger generation, that doesn't always understand Presbyterianism, but who among us does? But nonetheless, we've been able to open our lives and our doors to a new generation of people. Our contemporary service, at least a third to a half of them are probably under 25 in worship and attendance. Well, throughout this journey, we have attempted to treat one another with respect, grace, and compassion, even as we've wrestled with our theological, ecclesiological, political, economic, and cultural differences. We've done this in large measure by depending upon the presence and power of the Holy Spirit, but we've also done it in large measure because we've simply chosen to take our missions seriously and not take ourselves seriously. And to demonstrate that, I just want you to check out this video.
What you say, you do here.
I'd be happy to answer as many of them as I can. Feel free to talk with our associate Karen Renner, who is also here, and with anybody who has one of those understated green t-shirts. And if no one else is available, talk to Ted. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Del. Let us pray for this church. O God, our God, from the beginning, living as a people in the world but not of it, we have often found ourselves in capital cities. Great people of faith have identified opportunities to speak truth to power, to set good examples, to inspire civic leadership, and even to change the course of history. We thank you this day for the faithful witness of First Presbyterian Church in this capital city and beyond. Thank you for pastors and elders and deacons and members. Grant them great blessings and joys in their work together in this important place. Through Christ, with Christ, and in Christ, we pray. Amen. Okay, now we have the consent agenda. The next item of business is the consent agenda, which is a way to quickly handle routine and non-controversial business matters so that we can devote more time to other more important items or more complicated items. The consent agenda is on the screen, and more detail can be found on page 5 of the background papers. If you see an item right now in the consent agenda that you would like to discuss or oppose, simply call out the number of the item, and the clerk will remove it so that it can be discussed during the clerk's report and a vote taken then. Are there any items that you wish to remove from the consent agenda? Yes. Number 4. And you are? Okay, Doug Ewell, Westminster, Portland. From now on, if you'd please come to the mics, because part of what's happening is we are streaming this remotely and people cannot hear if you simply stand up and speak from where you are. So we have a motion to adopt, to pull out number 4, which is to adopt the equalization formula. So that'll be dealt with later. Any other items that anyone wishes to pull out from the consent agenda? Okay, the removed items, number 4 in this case, will be taken up later during the clerk's report. The consent agenda now includes all 5 items except for item 4. If there's no further objection or items to be removed from the consent agenda, then I will declare it adopted. The next item of business is the Presbytery Leadership Commission report. June? So from now on, if you are intending to speak, please come to one of the mics near you. I see 2 out on the floor, and identify yourself and either your church or your position in the Presbytery, like a member at large, for instance. June.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
So I really want to thank Presbyterian Church here for that warm welcome and summary and video of your activities. It was fascinating. Since this is my last meeting to participate with you in my current role as chair of the Presbytery Leadership Commission, I would first like to thank you for the opportunity to contribute my 2 cents and 2 years in Presbytery business. It's been a fascinating process for me. My presentation today serves in a manner of a State of the Presbytery report and report of the latest activities of the PLC. As I was installed 2 years ago as moderator, we had just experienced hosting a hugely successful General Assembly in Portland and had just embarked on the staffing and the reorganization within the Presbytery. You all remember that in Klamath Falls? We've made progress in moving forward and have challenges beckoning us in the immediate future. I'll summarize. Once we participated in a special meeting to deliberate and ultimately approve the staffing plan. Presbytery committees recruited and the Presbytery elected 2 executive-level presbyters, the Presbyter for Vision and Mission, Brian Herron, and in September, and the Advocate for Congregations and Clergy, Clark Scalera, in February. Clark is working on developing, I mean, maybe he's trying to figure out what he's doing, right? But he's working, listen to this. So Clark is working on developing guidance for ongoing committees, which we hope will increase their independence, thus allowing staff more time to focus on those relationships to which they are uniquely suited, such as increasing collaborations among clergy, for one example. I simplify, but that's the heart of what I understand he's doing, and if he wants these notes to help him, I'll be happy to give them to him. Brian, on the other hand, has been around a little bit longer, but not much, and he's immersed in visiting congregations to connect with them and learn of their strengths and challenges. And we'll hear from Brian very shortly. In the process of recruiting and selecting these positions, our attention was called to our process and how effective or not they were in encouraging diversity in our leadership. We have arrested the process to select the 2 remaining positions, a communications coordinator and a coordinator for congregational discernment, and based on the motion to examine our hiring practices made at our most recent special Presbytery meeting, the PLC appointed a subcommittee of the Presbytery to assess our recruitment and hiring processes. Our goal is to modify the recruitment and selection process to result in a more diverse candidate pool and to ensure both affirmative action and equal opportunity are affirmed. This committee is chaired by Robin Gavin and was appointed in late May, and they've met once in mid-June. And you'll hear a brief report from this committee also later in the meeting. The next thing on my agenda is the Genesis Community Fellowship. At the June 2017 Presbytery meeting, so a year ago, we were reminded that we have a perhaps broken relationship with the Genesis Community Fellowship in Northeast Portland. They had purchased property by contract from the Presbytery in 2008 and had later received a loan from the Presbytery to pay property taxes. Since then, the leadership met with Genesis pastor and to hear their story and how they perceived the Presbytery as more like bankers and lawyers and less like brothers and sisters. They expressed their hurt and frustration when they asked for financial help from the Presbytery, that the Presbytery offered a loan with interest. It was an eye-opening meeting, and Paul and Jeff Siebert and I left with a strong sense of lesson learned, that interracial and intercultural relationships should be built on strong foundation of personal relationship, not a business relationship. Since our meeting with Genesis, Jeff Siebert, Paul, and myself have been stewing on ways to more responsibly approach interracial faith partnerships with Genesis and others in our midst. Which leads me to talking about cross-cultural partnerships. The idea of encouraging cross-cultural partnerships also emerged out of those conversations. Currently, the Committee on Representation is working to define a grant program providing a framework for challenge our congregations to embrace ways to share service with those from other races, cultures, and faiths. Then we have work on the Property Potentiality Task Force. Since January, a hard-working task force has been hammering out a proposal for property formerly occupied by congregations that are now held and managed by the Presbytery. Later in this meeting, you'll hear from this task force and have an opportunity to discuss and vote on their recommendations on how we think about property and the process for considering the best use of properties and ways to expand our mission in the Presbytery. Then we have the Committee on Representation. With the focus of seeking greater diversity in our leadership positions, we also started to wonder how to ensure increased attention of diversity in all other Presbytery processes and protocols. The PLC initiated a bylaws change to add a representative of CORE as a member of the Leadership Commission, and that membership takes place this month. Next month. It's almost tomorrow, right? So, I'm aware that as Kay Baker left this office, she also left the state for parts east. Last year, Jenny Warner left for new challenges in California. And this year, I leave to start a new adventure in Washington. I start a new job with the city of Kirkland, near Seattle, in Washington, next Monday. Yeah. I'm not moved. I don't have a place to live. Andy and I will be closer to grandchildren, and we've all heard about transportation challenges in the Puget Sound area, and you know I'm in transportation. And while I don't expect to fix all of those problems, I am looking forward to representing the city of Kirkland in regional discussions of congestion relief and community livability. I start on Monday. I don't yet have a place to live, so I have logistics galore to keep me busy and awake at night. When I started 2 years ago, I had hoped to introduce a component of interfaith activities and awareness in Cascades Presbytery. Many of us attended pre-Presbytery workshops and learned more about Judaism and Islam, those two especially. Not consequently, but coincidentally, we've increased our interest in increasing diversity in recruitment and hiring practices. And we're in the process of expanding our interracial faith cultural partnerships. I fully support these activities and challenge you all to continue getting to know the unknown and venture to beyond talking about faith and worship and actually doing mission together. It's been a huge honor for me to work with you. I would be remiss if I didn't thank a few people, although all of you and all these familiar faces that I didn't know 2 years ago, and now I'm moving, so it's a little bittersweet here. Two people that I really want to thank are Jim Moiso and his friend Jim Peterson, who I don't think is here today. They kind of became my kitchen cabinet in the course of doing this work that I've been doing. And I very much appreciate their wisdom and humor. I would also be remiss if I didn't thank Cascades Presbytery staff for providing backup, and when it came to it, sometimes front up. Paul has proven a great support, this Paul right here. Always there with PC, that's Presbyterian Church and politically correct, advice and leadership. He's demonstrated both sensitivity and guidance to me. Paul, I cherish your sense of humor. It's been so critical in many situations. Thank you. So I wish you all many years of successfully meeting challenges and expanding our mission. Thank you very much.
Moderator, even before this meeting, as I was thinking about June and what she has brought to this presbytery, I happened to be at another PC gathering, the General Assembly, and in the hall there where they have many vendors, there was someone from the Holy Land that was selling jewelry, and as he pointed out various items, there was one item that caught my eye and reminded me of June, because it is a small, I think this is called a pendant. Is that the PC word for that?
I think so.
Okay, and on this pendant there is, hopefully you can see,
yes, I can.
because I can't, I need my glasses on, but there is I believe there's a Jewish menorah.
Star of David and a menorah.
And a menorah, and I believe that's actually a star for Islam, and then a fish the symbol for Christianity. So all three there. And we give this to you as you go your way, but hopefully we will take to heart what you brought to us, that understanding that together with our other brothers and sisters, those of other faiths, we can do more, and we will take your words to heart and continue that work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want a bag for it?
Yeah?
Do you want a bag for it?
Thank you, June, for your report and for your excellent service. Were there any questions about her report before we let her go? All right. So I'm trying to find my way here since the agenda keeps changing. All right, I believe that next we are to General Assembly commissioners. Is that correct? No? No? Is Brian next? Okay. So the report of the Presbytery for Vision and Mission.
June, are you still here? Did she? Oh boy. Well, I just wanted to personally thank her as well. We both waded into this water together as she had just a year as the chairperson of PLC, and I've just been in this position for 8 months, so we've been supporting each other and learning together as well. I can't believe I just have 5 minutes to capture everything that's happened in 8 months in the visiting of churches and General Assembly and whatnot, but I think I can pare it down to about 5 minutes. And I'd like to start off with a quote I heard in the Ways and Means, the Way Forward Committee at General Assembly, and they were quoting Desmond Tutu, and apparently he had been asked about how it is that he came up with this plan to end apartheid in South Africa. And he said, "Oh, you only come up with the destination and then you start walking." And I share that with you because I feel like that's what we're doing. That's how I've approached this position is, we have some sense that the church is emerging into something new in the future, but we may not come up with the perfect plan right now, but we can start walking and just wade into this, and that's how I feel like I have approached this. So I want to share a little bit about what I've learned in the 5 or 6 months that I've been visiting churches. Of the 96 churches in our presbytery, I have been able to get to 63 of them. There's another 6 that I visited prior to my intentional visits. There are another 10 that are scheduled, and I still have about 18 churches to follow up on to see if I can wrangle a visit out of them as well. And one of the things I want to say is that I knew I bit off a big piece by choosing to visit all the churches in a very, very short time, but despite it being a pretty frantic pace for me, I feel like I feel really good about approaching it this way. And the reason is as I think about working with the Presbytery Leadership Commission and Personnel and Administration and the new ministries team and the different committees and commissions that I'll be working with, that the decisions that we make aren't going to be made in a vacuum where we sort of get around a table and maybe with a whiteboard and decide where we're going. When I think about these conversations and decisions, I'm going to have real people's faces in front of me, conversations that I've had, hearing the stories of the congregations, having physical spaces that I can refer back to, and to be able to make decisions down the road knowing that it's truly connected relationally to our congregations and to the members of our congregations feels really important to me. And so after the Presbytery meeting tomorrow, I am taking a 3-week vacation to slow things down after this, but I'm very, very happy with what I've learned so far in this. And what I want to say is that one of the big things that has been really clear to me in visiting the diversity of our churches is that we are a Matthew 25 kind of church and presbytery. All over the map as I visited churches, it was very clear that one of the highest priorities and deepest parts of our mission and sense of who we are is that we would reach out to the least of these. And it was in Gold Beach with just a handful of members who weekly still do a soup kitchen, international missions from Columbia, Vancouver, and Bend, Eugene Central, Lake Grove and Lake Oswego, places such as Senegal and Syria and Guatemala. The Church of Phoenix has a small group on Sunday, and yet they have this amazing community services program that the community absolutely depends on. And sometimes we ask the question, what would the community miss if you were gone? Boy, I'll tell you what, in Phoenix, the community would really miss that church because of the food pantry and the clothing closet and the support that they offer in the community. At Grace Presbyterian Church in Portland, every single Sunday they make 40 lunches for Prescott Terrace, which is a transitional housing program. In Cottage Grove, we know that they received the $100,000 grant from the Presbyterian Women's Birthday Offering for doing tiny houses, and they have the property bought for that. And in addition to that, there are dozens and dozens of our congregations that offer space to the agencies and the programs that also reach out to the least of these in our communities. And so one of the things that I've come away with in my visits is we truly are a Matthew 25 kind of church and presbytery. And here's what I've discovered about my role. And actually it was in the job description, but now I'm beginning to see which areas are highlighted in that. And the big thing that I am feeling about my role as the Presbytery for Vision and Mission is that it feels like in the coming years what my role will be is to help our presbytery and our churches to negotiate an almost certain shift, maybe even radical shift, in how it is that we embody Christian spiritual community. That's one of the things that's becoming very clear about my role, to help the presbytery and our churches to negotiate an almost certain shift in how we embody Christian spiritual community in this time that we now live in. And I've had just enough conversations now to begin to see how I'll begin to focus on that. One of the things I have discovered is that a few of our congregations are asking questions about how they should organize themselves around leadership when they have sometimes 50%, even 60% of their congregation who are now non-members. They're essentially full participants in the life of the congregation, except for serving as an elder or a deacon. And so some of the churches are asking questions, how do we deal with the issue of our organization and our leadership when at least 50% of our congregation now are non-members? And so I can imagine now having conversations with some of those church leaders to talk about how it is that we partner in ministry together and help all of us negotiate through one of these new questions. A number of our congregations are asking questions about what it means to do ministry in this Pacific Northwest context, a context that where we hear a lot of people calling themselves spiritual but not religious. I know we are considered the none zone, where people on the census check the box that says none when it comes to religious affiliation. And so many of our congregations are asking the question, how do we do ministry in this Pacific Northwest context? And so I can imagine now having conversations with those folks and thinking about, again, how do we provide the resources and partnerships to answer some of those questions and engage in ministry together. A number of our congregations have more building than they do ministry. And I can imagine now having some conversations with some of those churches and church leaders about how it is that we repurpose our buildings, and so that the buildings become one of the major spiritual assets to the community in how we do ministry. I know one congregation and a couple others who said something similar. They're looking way down the road and wondering, do we need to start thinking about what buildingless church might look like? And so I can imagine having a couple of conversations with church leaders if that's a question that we need to begin to ask and start to tease that out, not in the next year or two, but maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 years down the road. One of the major themes that has emerged in almost every single congregation has been the issue around affordable housing, transitional housing, and homelessness. And to me, that's going to be one of the most obvious ones where begin to help our churches partner together, because I would say it's probably been 75 to 80% of the congregations have said this is probably our most important ministry to our community at this point. How do we deal with the issue of affordable housing in our communities? And then depending what happens tonight with the property task force, I know I'll be spending quite a bit of time with the new ministries team and the trustees. We now have 4 properties that are there, and you can imagine how this offers us an opportunity to be creative, to think outside the box, to be completely open as we think about what we might do with these properties or what we might do with the proceeds that come from the properties. But we have this great and amazing opportunity when you think about 4 properties that we can now use as the basis for new ministry. The other thing that's becoming a real deep and obvious realization to me is that part of my personality is I have this tendency to want to take everything on my own shoulders. And one of the quick discoveries I'm having is that we truly are going to have to do this all together. And I think I'm asking for your help, basically. I will walk with you. I will be with you. I will guide. And I will engage in every way that I can. I will put a great investment of energy and time into this position. But I truly believe that if we're going to move through this time, we are going to have to do it together. And it's just a reinforcement of what it means to be Presbyterian, to walk together. And then lastly, this is a part that I just felt needed to be added in the last couple of days. Like many of you, I find myself wrestling and troubled. And if truly we are a Matthew 25 kind of church and Presbytery, one of the parts of that text that I think is most highlighted for our time is where Jesus says that when you reached out to the stranger, you reached out to me. And I guess what I'm asking as you go back to your churches is that I'm less interested in where it is that you come out on this particular issue than I am that each one of our congregations wrestle with that text. That what does it mean in your church? What does it mean in your town, in your community? What does it mean for our nation and for your commitments to live into and out of the idea that we meet Jesus when we welcome the stranger? I really believe right now that this moment in which we find ourselves, that history will probably judge us by what we do or what we don't do. And so all that I ask you to do is to take seriously this text. We are a presbytery that reaches out to the least of these. And in this time, we especially think of those who are alien and stranger. I also personally want to thank our staff. We have a bunch of great, creative and bright and flexible and committed folks on our staff, and I'm just thrilled to be able to work together with all of them. And thank you all for the privilege of serving in this position. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, for your report. Now we have the report of the General Assembly Commissioners, correct? Good.
As folks walk up, I'll just start. I'm Katie Pate. I serve as the pastor of Milwaukee Presbyterian Church, and I will have been there 10 years this January. And 20 years ago, I was a seminary intern in this congregation, so I'm grateful for this community. We were at GA for 9 days. I think a lot of you know what GA is like because it was in Portland last time, and you got to be there. But what we're going to do is we're just each going to share our top 3 to 5 things that really moved us or that we were really taken with at GA. So I think that's how we're going to try and stay within our time period. So I will let Martin, do you want to go ahead?
I want to talk about three things that really struck me about being at the General Assembly. Number one was at the Portland General Assembly, we elected J. Herbert Nelson as our stated clerk. And he left that General Assembly thinking, what did we leave to the Portland community? And he felt that we had not left much to the Portland community, even though we held our General Assembly there. So he started an initiative called the Hands and Feet Initiative. And what he called on the church to do was, when we go to a town to have our General Assembly, he wanted us to have an impact. So we raised $47,000 in our first worship service. We took that money, and 500 to 600 of us marched down the street to the Justice Center, and we gave it to groups in St. Louis who bail people out of jail. St. Louis has a cash bail system. If you fail to pay a parking ticket and get arrested, in Oregon, they'll probably let you out on your own recognizance. In St. Louis, you got to put up money. And so people lose their jobs, they lose their homes, they plead guilty because they want to get out of jail instead of being presumed innocent. We paid $47,000 to those organizations to do that. The second thing that really got to me was he talked to us about approaching the idea of kingdom as opposed to kingdom. Now, this is a philosophy that came out of the feminist movements and in the Hispanic community. And it's based on the idea of seeing God's kingdom not as a hierarchical, I can't say the word, or zero-sum system, but as a family, a big, messy family that makes us groan and makes us proud, and seeing that God's kingdom, and then working through that and throughout the General Assembly. That idea of family and the kingdom of God was a paramount in all that we did. And we took bags with socks and underwear and things out to people on the streets. We took meals out. We went to some homes and helped people clear junk and get their properties clean. So it was reaching out. I have a couple other things to say, but I've spent my time.
I'm Vicki Brown. I serve as pastor at First Presbyterian Church in Roseburg. And this was, well, I volunteered in Portland, but this was my first time to be a commissioner, as it was for all of us. When you are a commissioner at General Assembly, you are assigned to a committee. The committee I was assigned to was Committee 4, The Way Forward. And everyone would hear that and say, oh, I'll be praying for you. And I greatly appreciated that. The Way Forward Committee dealt with several different documents that came from a variety of commissions that had been established at previous General Assemblies, including the A Corporation, which I had never heard of before. So we had a lot of learning to do, and we did learn about the whole interior workings of the church and did propose a new way of structuring that corporation, and it was favorably received by the General Assembly, so you will be reading more about that. One of the other things that we took up was the diversity within our denomination, and coming from Roseburg, where cultural diversity is fairly minimal, it was delightful to be in St. Louis and see the diversity across our denomination and within a large Midwestern city. One of the things that we proposed and was adopted at General Assembly is enhanced translation services for other languages and other abilities, and that is both translation of English documents into other languages, as well as languages or documents that are being produced in other countries that will be translated into English so that we may benefit from the experience of people in other cultures as they are worshiping and discovering new ways to worship. I also wanted to share with you from the 2020 Vision team a document that you will be seeing, and they are asking us to think about PCUSA and these words associated with each of those letters. So for P, it's prayerful. For C, it's courageous. For U, it's united. For S, it is serving. And for A, it is alive. And it's how we live as Presbyterians into that vision. And we're being asked as churches and individuals to work with those words. And you'll be getting some materials to work with those words in sermons and classes, and then to respond back to the next General Assembly in 2020 and give input into that as a vision for our denomination.
Good afternoon, I'm Eva Clark. This is also my first time to the GA. It was good, it was fun, I learned a lot, especially in terms of Robert's rule or Presbyterian rules. Anyway, like Vicky said, we are assigned to a committee. We don't choose the committee, we have no choice, you're there. So I am assigned to committee number 6, which is church polity and ordered ministry. And we have a lot of business. Our agenda was full, that we really work, and over time, we were the last to leave that first night in the building, I think, because when we were done, I didn't see anybody else walking but us. Anyway, I'd like to share one of the overtures that our committee discussed. And one of the overtures has a recommendation, which is to instruct the Board of Pension to include 12 weeks of paid parental leave as part of the benefit package of all employees covered. And we Presbyterians support paid leave for parents. And let me give you a quick background for that, and I'll be reading from the GA News. In 2014, the 221st General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church USA voted to encourage presbyteries and denominational agencies to adopt policies that provide for at least 6 weeks of paid leave without exhausting other paid time off. And in 2016, the 222nd General Assembly held in Portland, the Assembly voted to encourage the 6 agencies of the General Assembly to evaluate leave policies to provide paid parental and family leave. A question: how should congregations and denominational agencies pay for adequate leave for parents to care for children new to their families, whether through birth, adoption, or fostering? So when the 23rd General Assembly, the one we were in, convened on June 16, a chief agenda item for the Committee on Church Paid Polity and Ordered Ministry will be determining how parental leave is paid for and whether parental leave policies should be standardized throughout the denomination. So our committee, the Church and Polity Committee, discussed this, and after the long discussion, the committee came up with a motion to change all the word parental with family, because there is a difference. Parental refers to parents' leave for a child new to the family, whether the wife give birth or they adopt a new baby or what. And family leave expands the policy to include senior care and other circumstances. So we voted on the motion and then the amendment. The amendment passed and our committee amended the amendment. So I tell you there's a lot of amendment, amend to the amendment till we all got confused. So then our committee amend the amendment with a motion that paid leave be given in case of critical family needs up to full 8 weeks as needed and 4 unpaid weeks. The motion passed and then the next amendment. Finally, the committee moved that the 22-3rd GA appoint a 6-member task force to determine how family leave will be paid for and whether family leave policy should be standardized throughout the whole denomination and to report to the next GA assembly, 2014. So like I said earlier, I've never seen such Robert's rule. We all got confused after amending the amendment, and then there was a huddle between the moderator, assistant moderator, the transcriptionist, and the, what do you call that, advisor who knows the Robert's rule of order. They're all huddling. Sometimes it's short, sometimes it's long, that I was asked to pass the candies around to keep everybody, awake too. So, am I done?
I think we're good. Yeah, I'm going to go.
Okay.
All right. Paul Scudder, yes, thank you. We have our pictures going, and in the center is Annika Gage, who is our TSAD, which is a Theological Student Advisory Delegate, and with her is Carl, another TSAD, and we're with the Mr. Rogers mural at Sugar Fire Barbecue. But Annika is a student at McCormick transferring to Louisville, and she's a member of Tualatin. So I would just like to lift up some of the resources that we got. This was an amazing, I think all assemblies get to be kind of the moment, and it was really wonderful to see them responding to things that were in the news the day before. For example, we did condemn the executive action from June 20th, and we talked about it June 21st, and that's one of the great things about being at Assembly, and then you realize, we can't always operate this way, this swiftly, but we did deal with a large number of issues having to do with racial justice and also justice for transgender and non-binary people. It was really inspiring to be there. So you might want to write these down. I have a couple resources that you should check out if you haven't seen them already. Of course, the Presbyterian Outlook's coverage of the General Assembly is phenomenal if you want to know what happened there. We took about, I think, a little more than 130 actions, so it's kind of hard to let you know what they all were. Some of the things that I really loved were we began the process of adding Dr. Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham City Jail to the Book of Confessions. And that's a big deal. It's going to take 6 years. Yeah. If it happens, it will require, we'll be talking about it. It would need to be ratified by a majority of the presbyteries because we're changing our constitution. But that was a wonderful conversation there. And I encourage you, just study it. It's available online. It's easy to get. We also talked a lot about the Reclaiming Jesus statement that kind of comes out of Sojourners. It includes Bishop Michael Curry and Richard Rohr and Jim Wallace, the leaders of the AME and UCC churches. And our church hasn't quite signed off on it yet. We move slowly, so our leaders are looking into signing off on it. In the meantime, we are encouraged to study it in our congregations. And Vicki pointed out to me there are incredible study resources. It's a 9-part Bible study on civil discourse, and it's free. So Reclaiming Jesus. And then there's a film that comes out of our denomination. It's available on our website, and it's called The Genesis of Exodus. And it lets us know kind of why are we having so many asylum seekers? Why are people willing to leave their countries to come here over a pretty dangerous path? And so it focuses on issues in Guatemala, Nicaragua, and El Salvador that impact the immigration process. And then finally, Won't You Be My Neighbor, the documentary on Fred Rogers, which opens at Salem Cinema today. So you can go at 9:30 tonight after the meeting. You can go tomorrow after the meeting. And then I just want to say I was so inspired by our leaders. At General Assembly, our outgoing moderators, our incoming moderators, our stated clerk, of course, is incredible. And I was so inspired by our young adult advisory delegates, our theological student delegates, and the other commissioners. And I left this assembly just feeling like our church is in such good hands. I mean, it was a wonderful, affirming place to be. J. Herbert Nelson talked about humbling ourselves for the sake of the gospel. He said, "We do not long for glory days. We seek the calling of the present age." And then I think that those are powerful for us. So I'll stop. I think we're over time, Paul, so apologies, moderator. But thank you.
Thank you, commissioners, for your report. So next, I believe we have the nominating committee report. Linda Shaw is going to come forward and give that report for us.
Well, I want to say good afternoon to everyone.
Good afternoon.
And thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, Paul, for putting this paper together for me. I sort of shortened it a little bit. I appreciate that. I am Linda Jackson Shaw, a ruling elder from Community Presbyterian Church in Redmond, and a member of the nominating committee. Today, our committee report consists of two parts. First, we will briefly present a new way for the Presbytery to nominate commissioners to General Assembly. In order that you may comment and we get a sense of future work we may want to do or need to do. Then we will present the slate of candidates for the officers, commissioners, and committee membership. The first item of business is for your information and to start a conversation about how we nominate commissioners for the General Assembly and how we might improve that process. The goal of the nominating committee is to bring a recommendation to change the process for your vote at the November meeting. Today we are just seeking comments and questions. And you're probably wondering, why are we considering a new way to nominate? The nominating committee has found it challenging to find commissioners, and particularly ruling elder commissioners, with the current process. The length of the process often results in a scramble at the end to come up with nominees for the positions of General Assembly commissioners to present to the Presbytery in November. You can see the current process and a proposed new process in the background papers. I encourage you to read it carefully if you haven't already. And if you'd like to have further discussion and you would like to submit some questions, our stated clerk will be available tomorrow at Open Space. Is that correct, Paul? Okay. And he will take your questions and submit them to the nominating committee to consider for our November meeting. We now turn to the slate of candidates found on page 13 of the background papers. Mr. Moderator, the nominating committee nominates Barbara Campbell for the office of Moderator 2018 through 2019.
Barbara Campbell's name has been placed in nomination by the nominating committee. Are there any nominations from the floor? Okay, hearing none, if I invite Barbara forward to address the Presbytery concerning her hopes and goals if elected moderator. Is that all? Yeah, that's all. No, don't stand down there.
Come on.
Up here's fine.
Right there. I'll sit right here.
Well, a few weeks ago, I wrote something for your Presbytery papers, and that basically states how I see the role of moderator. But I was thinking today, and I don't know, do you want me to read that? Okay.
No.
I was just thinking today how, what a time we are in right now, when as churches, a lot of us are feeling vulnerable and as if we need to sort of hunker down and take care of the vulnerabilities that are within our congregation. Maybe we have fewer people to fill all those committees and all of that, and it's a time of kind of working hard at who we are. And yet at the same time, we're living in a time when culturally and politically, even around the world, a time when the church needs to be speaking out to those who live around us. And there's some tension in that, I think. And I think that leads what I see the priorities being for the church, to both support our churches that are trying to figure out what the future holds for them, to resource them, to enable them to continue to be together as the church, and yet at the same time to encourage them to be speaking out to a world that very much needs to hear our voices right now. That's it in a nutshell. I hope I can be a good listener. I hope I can help us to clarify what it is we want to do together and to build consensus and understanding. I hope that I can lead in such a way that we all understand what we're doing from moment to moment, because I know when I've been sitting out there in the pew, I've lost my way a number of times. So I hope we can do it together and stay on the same page and understand everything we're doing and come to consensus together and work together in love to glorify God.
Amen. Thank you, Barbara. One of the qualities of the office is brevity that people appreciate, so we appreciate you being concise. Okay, so now the nominating committee would present the remainder of your report.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. On behalf of the nominating committee, I place into nomination the names found on page 14 through 16 of the background papers.
Okay, you have those papers in hand. You all dutifully downloaded them before the meeting, right? Good job. And are there any other additional names that the Presbytery wishes to place into nomination at this time?
Barbara Campbell, and I am presently serving Gresham Presbyterian Church, Covenant Presbyterian in Gresham.
Yes,
Sorry,
that's great.
I needed to come all the way around the microphone. I would place in nomination Rob Christ, who is a ruling elder from Reedsville in Aloha, to serve on the COCC Northwest.
Okay.
So Rob Christ from Reedville, still at Reedville?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
To serve on the Committee on Congregations Northwest?
COCC.
COCC.
Congregational
yeah. Congregational Connection Northwest. Okay, thank you. Are there other nominations from the floor? Yes.
I don't know if...
Please state your name and your church.
Okay, Margie Brown from Westminster, and I noticed there are a couple of names, Westminster, Portland,
Okay.
and that's the question I have, is on page 15, where Eric Graff is listed as a ruling elder from Westminster, Portland, for Commissioner, Commission on Ministry Northeast, and to my knowledge, that person is not a member of Westminster. I understand it should be Rose City Park.
Should be Rose City Park for Eric Graff, listed under class of 2021 on page 15 for Commission and Ministry. Can
Correct.
somebody confirm that that is correct? That is correct? Okay.
Do you want to correct the other one?
So if you'd please change that on your papers if you wish to do that. Yes.
Lee Lawrence Moiseau, Rose City Park. The other correction is also on that same page.
Okay.
And it is Sue Graff. Wait, it's not that page. The next page, page 16, Permanent Judicial Commission, class of 2024. Sue Graff is a member of Rose City Park, Portland.
So Sue Graff, who's about 9 names down on page 16 under Permanent Judicial Commission, is also from Rose City Park. Thank goodness we have them now back together, right? Are there any other nominations or corrections? Yes.
Ann Bowersock, joyfully retired. Have a question. When we nominate from the floor, do we not need permission for the person? If we're not nominating ourselves, don't we need permission from them to nominate?
Let me have the clerk respond to that. Getting permission from the person nominated.
Mr. Moderator, that is correct, though unfortunate. It's often easier to find people if we don't ask permission. But in the long run,
realize this is streaming out to the wide world, okay? I'm just saying.
Mr. Moderator, let me correct my answer and be emphatically
Okay.
clear that one should ask for permission when nominating someone, if it's not yourself, or if changing their church of membership, but I believe we've got them in the right church now.
Okay, for the person whose name was added, was their permission sought before nomination? Okay. Barbara says yes. So that T has been crossed. Any other nominations from the floor or questions about the list of nominees? Okay. If there are, and Mr. Clerk, there are no contested positions at this point, correct?
Moderator, that is correct.
As none of the positions are contested, the motion is to elect the full slate of nominated candidates. Those in favor, please say yes. Yes. Those opposed, please say no. The candidates are elected and begin their service at the conclusion of the meeting on Saturday. Are there any other items for business, Linda?
I'm not sure if this is business, but this is what I need to say.
Okay.
That this is a really difficult job nominating, and I understand a little bit more. I was chair of CORE. I understand a little bit more about finding people and getting people to agree to serve, but I can't stress enough the need to be more diverse, and it's hard to be diverse in a community where everybody's white. But there is more diversity than the color of our skins. There's a lot of diversity, and I would ask your help for the nominating committee. Help us out a little bit. Put some names in, encourage your friends who you think could help the nominating and help the various committees that we're looking to fill. So Mr. Moderator, our report is concluded.
Thank you very much. So next is the Treasurer Nominating Committee. Next, we have a report from the Treasurer Nominating Committee. Oh, did you have a question?
I just wanted to...
Name and church.
This is Linda Stewart Kalin.
Yeah.
I'm a minister of Word and Sacrament from Colonial Heights Presbyterian Church. You hear announcements such as the one just made by Linda, and I don't know if you go home and put it on your church prayer calendar. I don't know if you go home to your session and say, could we make a commitment to 10% of our membership being willing to say, I will serve at a regional level? But it takes feet. It's one thing to have the vision, but as we heard, you have to take steps towards it. So Linda didn't just say that because she's taking a responsibility that's hard. She needs us to put our feet in motion. And would you send your bulletin to her with the announcement that you are praying for their work, the announcement that you are asking your membership to serve? We have to put feet in motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have the Treasurer Nominating Committee. This nominating committee, composed of the members of the PLC, places the name of Craig Butler into nomination. Are there any other nominations for the role of Treasurer? Hearing none, we move to the question. All those in favor of Craig Butler serving as Treasurer, class of 2021, say yes. Yes. All opposed, say no. Craig is therefore elected. And you are asked, right? Yeah, with your arm twisted. Okay, great, congratulations. The vice moderators will now present the names of those nominated to serve on the nominating committee, which we just had a report from. And Barbara is going to do that for us.
Representing the vice moderators, one more time. We put the name of Young Hyung, if I'm saying that correctly, I hope, who is a minister member from Korean Presbyterian Church in Corvallis, to be the nominee from the central region, and again, all the other regions are still vacant for nominating committee.
Oh, wow, okay. So we have this one name. Are there other names that you wish to place in nomination for the nominating committee? We have one person now in nomination from central region, you said, correct? Maybe we shouldn't have made it sound so hard, right? It is a very important committee and very valuable work. Okay, all those in favor of this person being elected to the nominating committee, please say yes. Yes. All opposed, say no. It is so ordered. Thank you. And thank you, Vice Moderators, for your report. Now I understand it's time for a break. Is that still correct? Okay. So we have a break until 4:50. And that is a little bit of time. I think we ended up like 1 minute over our agenda. So please enjoy yourself, relax for a few moments, and come back by 4:50. Thanks. I think we're back.